Hello YouTube. I've decided I want to start a series of videos that will help amateurs like myself ID native plant species in the area. And for anyone curious, I'm in southern Ontario, so this is North America, more east coast, slightly central. But it could apply to a lot of different areas in North America as well. When it comes to particular species though, you'll obviously want to check your species distributions and see, depending on where you live, if those species are even in your area. I'm a bio major school-wise, and I've done a lot of work in wetlands, especially with fish and aquatic invertebrates. But recently I started teaching myself how to ID local plants because I had a lot of free time. And so I decided I was going to start making some YouTube videos on this, so maybe other people could get into it as well. So this is fairly amateur. If I say things that are wrong or incorrect, it's probably because I'm still learning. So feel free to correct me in the comments because I want to make sure I'm not putting misinformation out there. I've used a couple of different guides while I've been teaching myself. The best one I found so far is this Eastern Trees. It's a Peterson Field Guide, and it has different plates for a bunch of different species, as well as ways to distinguish similar species apart from one another. And also at the very back, it even has a dichotomous key on how to distinguish different species during the winter when there's no leaves around, because it can be a little tricky when you're relying just on buds and bark. Another book I've used heavily is this Great Lakes Wetland Flora. It's huge. It's like 700 pages. But unfortunately, as suggested in the name, it only consists of wetland plants, so it's not very inclusive. Another one is this Plants of Southern Ontario book, which I picked up. The only thing I don't like about it is that it does have a dichotomous key for the different species, but it's not as detailed as the Eastern Trees Guide, although this does have tons of different types of plants, not just trees, so aquatic plants, flowering plants, shrubs, and stuff like that. And then I've also extensively used this Trees of Wisconsin website. You can see the link here at the top. So Wisconsin is only a couple states over from where I live, so it still applies heavily to me. You can see here that they have the different groups by common and scientific names. And if you click on one, it's got tons of pictures, and then it gives you characteristics of their leaves and barks and similar species. So this is a pretty handy site to use as well. Okay, so for this first one, I'm just going to start off with different parts of plants because that's how will help us distinguish different species. So as I've been teaching myself, I've been making PowerPoint slides for different families for at the moment just trees, but I'll start to do aquatic plants and other groups of plants. But right now, we're just going to focus on trees for a while. So let's skip ahead a little bit here. Okay, I've also included a little bit of info on ferns, but I'm not going to cover that right now because that's a completely different group of plants. But we'll start with angiosperms and gymnosperms. So angiosperms are the ones that have flowers and fruits, and their seeds are enclosed. Whereas gymnosperms, their seeds can be exposed, and those are most often seen with trees that have pine cones. So you can see down here on the left, these are gymnosperms, whereas an apple tree would be an angiosperm. And then if you further go into angiosperms, you get monocots and dicots. Monocots are usually things like grasses, lilies, whereas dicots are hardwood trees and things like that. And there's a few different differences between the two groups that can help us distinguish them. Sorry, my cat's in the background making a lot of noise. So monocots have one cotyledon, whereas dicots have two, and a cotyledon is the embryonic leaf in the seed. It will be the first leaf that emerges when it hatches and sprouts out of the ground. So monocots will have one, dicots will have two. In monocots, if you look at their leaves, their veins usually run parallel with the leaf, whereas in dicots, as it says down here, they're net-like. So you can see from beginning to apex, the veins are running parallel, whereas they branch out in dicots. In their vascular bundles, so in their twigs and branches and stems, you can see there's different patterns. So in dicots, they're arranged in a ring. These are the vascular bundles here. And then in monocots, they're more sporadically placed apart. Root-wise, monocots have a fibrous root system, whereas dicots have a taproot. So a taproot is like one large root that can be quite hard to get through if you're pulling them out of the ground. And then if you look at their flowers, for monocots, their petals and their sepals, which we'll get into, are multiples of 3, so 3 or 6. Whereas with dicots, the petals and the sepals are multiples of 4 or 5. So I think that's pretty straightforward so far. I'm going to skip over ferns here for now. If we're looking at twigs and branches, so you can see over here buds, which is where new leaves or branches will come out of. The terminal bud is just the bud at the apex of the branch, so the one at the very end, whereas auxiliary buds are the ones along the way. On this side, we get a more close-up version because you can see a lot of buds have scales on them, so this will help you distinguish different species depending on the number of scales. Some don't have any, but many have at least 2 or several more. There is also a leaf scar that's left where the leaf falls off in the fall and winter. So that is this whole area here in both pictures. And then there's also bundle scars within the leaf scar. And so those are areas where the bundle connecting tissue of the leaf connected to the stem has pulled away. And this can also help you distinguish different species because in some species you'll have 3 bundle scars like here, in others you'll have several. And then looking at a leaf, parts of a leaf, so you have the blade, you have the petiole, which is the stalk that connects the leaf to the branch, and you have the stipules, which are like little leaf-like appendages at the base of the petiole. The midrib is the vein, or the vein that runs through the middle of the leaf, and you can see the smaller veins coming off of it. And there's a bunch of different shapes, descriptions for leaves depending on what you're looking at. So these simple ones here describe the outward shape of it, or the perimeter. I think for the most part they're fairly straightforward. Lobed, so these are leaves that have large indentations in their perimeter. Palmately lobed means like a hand or palm, hence the name. So all the lobes are coming out from a central radius, whereas pinnately lobed means they're all coming out from a central axis in the middle of the leaf. Termate just means there's 3 different leaves, or leaflets in this case. So these are all single leaves. When we get into compound leaves, they're composed of several leaflets. So they look like they're individual leaves, but they're actually leaflets that contribute to one large leaf. Sessile leaflets are just leaflets that don't have a petiole. They connect directly to the branch, so there's no stalk here connecting it to the branch. Whereas here you can see, it's hard to make out, but you can see 3 little stalks connecting it to the main branch. Petiolulate leaflets are just leaflets that do have petioles, and then pinnate is the same as pinnately lobed, where they are formed around a central axis. So if we move on now to parts of a flower, we have the stamen, which is the male parts, and the pistil, which is the female parts. So the stamen is composed of the anther and the filament, and the anther is where the male pollen is, and the filament is just the stalk that holds it up. Whereas the pistil is composed of the stigma, style, and ovary. So the stigma is the sticky end where pollen from the male anther will be collected and then deposited down the style into the ovary, and that's where the egg is, the ovule, the female egg, which becomes the seed. The sepal is similar to the petals, which are here these pink structures, in that they're similar shape, but they'll be the same color usually as the branch, and they're a supporting structure as the flower is initially forming. Let's see down here. So the peduncle is just another word for the stem, and the receptacle is the thickened part of the skin from which the flower initially starts to grow. Let me see if I've covered everything I wanted to here. And so different flowers can be arranged differently depending on their petal shapes as well. Some flowers will only have male parts, some flowers will only have female parts. Some plants will only have male flowers on them, some will have both, some will only have females. So these are other different characteristics that will help you identify the species of plant you're looking at. So we're going to start with conifers, which are your pines, your spruce, trees like that are also known as softwoods. So I think I'll begin that at the beginning of the next video, and then we'll go through it family by family, and we'll see how this goes. That's it for now.